Hello and welcome to the 103 Budgeting for EPR Fees webinar. This webinar is being recorded on October 7th, 2025, and information in this presentation is up to date as of October 7th, 2025. If you are watching this presentation at a later date, please make sure to check our website for the most up-to-date information. Okay, starting off with our legal disclaimer, this is a reminder that Circular Action Alliance is not an attorney nor law firm and does not provide legal advice or recommendations. Please do not take our advice as such. Information in this presentation is not substitute for the advice of an attorney. Please seek the advice of legal counsel as necessary. All right, our antitrust reminder. As with the nature of EPR, there are many competitors on the call, so please do not discuss any of the topics on the right. CAA will not discuss any of the topics on the right in order to comply with federal, state, and international antitrust or competition laws. Okay, some important reminders. As a reminder, this is the 103 Budgeting for EPR Fees session, and this session will focus on providing information on how EPR fees are set and information to support internal budgeting. This webinar is the third session in our three-part onboarding series. We also have our 101 onboarding session that focuses on providing an overview of EPR, CAA, and provides resources to help you determine if you should register with CAA. Additionally, we have our 102 that focuses on registration and agreements and dives deeper into discussing the Participant Producer Agreement, or PPA, and state addenda. As a reminder, please email producer.support@circularaction.org or submit a case through the Help and Support tab if you have any questions related to EPR fees. Okay, for our agenda today, we will focus on the producer journey, then talk about the national fee setting methodology, discuss fee budgeting for Oregon 2025 and 2026, look at vendor setup, discuss fee budgeting for Colorado 2026, and then finally discuss California early fees. Okay, starting off with the producer journey. To start, producers begin their journey by registering with CAA. Once you've registered and signed the PPA, you'll receive access to our producer portal. The producer portal is where producers submit supply reports for the state that they are obligated in. As a reminder, producers cannot submit a supply report until the state addenda for the reporting state is signed. After companies submit a supply report, CAA will set a final fee schedule and invoice producers, at which time producers will pay and the program will begin in that state. The first reporting and fee payment deadlines were for the state of Oregon in 2025, with the reporting deadline being back on March 31st, 2025, and the program starting on July 1st, 2025. Once the program began, companies will anticipate and begin innovating in order to potentially gain bonuses from reduced base fees and or eco-modulated bonuses that can be received based on actions companies are taking. Today, we're going to be focusing on budgeting and fees in our discussion, which is the final arrow in the producer journey. Okay, now we will dive into our national fee setting methodology. So the components of producer fees. So CAA has developed a national harmonized fee setting methodology to guide fee setting across states. Fee schedules for each state will vary due to state-specific requirements, differences in recycling infrastructure, and material supply quantities. CAA determines the total cost of operating a program in a state and allocates the cost to each material based on the cost to manage each material type, the total amount of each material type that is supplied into the state, and the commodity revenue for recycled materials. We will discuss the differences between base fees and eco-modulated fee adjustments. So starting with base fees, base fee rates are material specific and defined by cents per pound of material. The rates for each material type will be the same for each producer. There are four key components for developing the fee schedules. First is the total program cost, which is the cost of operating a program in a state based on each state's specific requirements, which could include the cost of managing all covered materials in a system, cost associated with program administration, education and outreach, and market development, and other requirements. The second component is the cost to manage each material category. All materials will have different cost impacts based on their quantities, material properties, and ease of collecting and recycling. The third component is commodity revenue of each material category. Materials are credited the revenues they earn, which reduces their management costs. And lastly, the fourth component is the total tons of each material category supplied into the state. Now, moving on to eco-modulation. Eco-modulation refers to the process where fee adjustments are applied for individual producers based on their actions or inactions to improve the environmental performance of their packaging. These monetary adjustments are typically applied in the form of incentives or bonuses or disincentives, like malices, on top of a producer's base fee for a particular material category. Each state has adopted different approaches to eco-modulation. For example, some states require incentivizing higher uses of post-consumer recycled content, or PCR, or packaging that is designed for reuse or refill. Other states' approaches focus on reducing material weight or redesigning a package to remove attributes that can be detrimental to recycling. CAA is working to harmonize eco-modulation factors across states where possible to provide clear signals to producers when they make a packaging design decision. Eco-modulation criteria and implementation details are included in each state's program plan. CAA has some guiding principles, which we will cover in the next slide. CAA invests considerable efforts to allocate only the capital and operating costs associated with the collection, processing, and transportation of each material. This isolates materials that require more equipment and labor to separate into a marketable commodity for those that require less. CAA's goal is to allocate fees fairly across the system. A key component of CAA's fee setting methodology is its guiding principles. On the left, you will see the 7 guiding principles for fee setting. Going down the line, we start with harmonization. In accordance with the mission of CAA, we look to harmonize where possible, and fees is no exception. Next is fairness. Fee rates for each material category are the same for all producers regardless of company size or sector. Fee schedules are informed by producer data, and each material will pay its fair share of system costs. Material-specific costs. This means that fee rates will reflect the burden of a material that is placed on the system. Commodity revenue. Some materials drive revenue in certain states, and we will account for those in our fee setting methodology. Next is eco-modulation. Eco-modulation refers to the process where fee adjustments are applied for individual producers based on their actions to improve the environmental performance of their packaging. Each state has adopted different approaches to eco-modulation, and CAA will incorporate those into fee setting methodology. Next is responsible end markets. Part of EPR is ensuring responsible end markets are established and/or improved. The fees will account for those costs. And lastly is clarity. CAA looks to provide clear communications to our stakeholder community. Okay, now let's walk through the variables in fee setting, moving from left to right. Starting at the top left, CAA does a needs assessment or some other study to determine the total systems cost. Then from there, CAA allocates those system costs to each material type based on the burden the material places on the system. From there, CAA will then give a credit to those materials that have a commodity value in a particular state. CAA also includes additional costs based on other factors such as administrative costs, education costs, regulatory costs, and more. And then, with all of that information, CAA will allocate those costs across the total supply into the system. This is based on the data producers report. After producers report, CAA is able to provide a fee rate back to our producers. Once the base fees are set, then CAA provides bonuses and malices based on the eco-modulation factors. Most recently, LCA Bonus A for Oregon was available for producers to work on and was due on August 15th, 2025. Colorado will release information on their eco-modulation guidance by 2026. Okay, now we are moving on to program budgeting and the fee setting process. So what makes up the program costs? Basically, everything you see here on the screen is what goes into making the program successful in accordance with the expectations of the regulators. This includes aspects of both collection, post-collection, regulatory costs, and administrative fees for the pro. Due to these various factors that make up program costs, fee schedules may not apply in the same way across different states. There are various market and state-specific input differences, including the scope of each state's program, the type and count of covered materials included in each state, the expected performance standards by each state, the state-specific cost to manage each material type and material revenue, the maturity of the existing state's recycling system, the quantity of each material type supplied into the state, the quantity of each material type supplied into the state by each producer, and the eco-modulation structure and approach by each state. Okay, now let's dive into state level eco-modulation comparisons. So starting with Oregon, the producer fees will cover the costs of capital investments for service expansion and depot setup to service the residential stream, as well as the management of commercially generated B2B materials that end up being managed under the EPR program. Life cycle assessments, or LCAs, of the impact of packaging materials will be included as an eco-modulation factor in Oregon. Bonuses will be granted for conducting LCAs and showing impact reductions. In Oregon, there are also flat fees. In accordance with Oregon law, CAA has proposed a tier flat fee structure for low volume producers with gross revenues of less than 10 million or covered materials sold for use in Oregon of less than 5 metric tons. Producers who meet the gross revenue eligibility requirement but supply more than 5 metric tons may also choose to pay a flat fee according to the following schedule. Low volume producers are eligible to pay flat fees and will have the option to either report all packaging weights and pay according to the fee rates, report against a flat fee tier reflecting a producer's total weight and pay the corresponding flat fee, or not report at all and pay the highest flat fee. Now, for California, the producer fees will cover the net new cost of recycling services to California state residents, including the capital investments for infrastructure and technology. Fees will also cover special assessments to support responsible end market development and source reduction initiatives. In California, eco-modulation is required across 9 factors, including the percentage of post-consumer recycled content, source reduction pathways to achieve source reduction goals, standardization of materials to simplify downstream management, labeling to improve consumer behavior related to sorting and proper disposal, actions taken by producers to accelerate source reduction and to invest in sustained and robust reuse and refill systems, and plastic covered materials derived from renewable materials. And then lastly, we have Colorado. The producer dues will cover the net cost of recycling services to Colorado state residents, including capital investments required for service expansions, material collection, sortation, and processing, and improvements to compost facilities to increase acceptance of compostable packaging. By 2028, the program will also cover recycling services for non-residential entities. In Colorado, eco-modulation is required across 8 factors. Some of these eco-modulation factors encourage incentivization for things like reductions in packaging, innovations and practices to enhance recyclability, high levels of post-consumer recycled material, designs for reuse and refill of covered material, and then high recycled and refill rates of covered materials. Additionally, these eco-modulation factors are required to discourage designs and practices that increase the cost of recycling, reusing, or composting covered materials, designs and practices that disrupt the recycling of other materials, and the use of recycled materials that are not on the minimum recyclable list, or the MRL. The Colorado Department of Health and Environment, or CDPHE, will develop a bonus schedule for CA to implement at the beginning of each year. Okay, and with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Matt to discuss EPR fee budgeting for Oregon.
Thanks, Savannah. The 2025 Oregon Producer Fee Schedule is now available. While the Oregon Program Plan was published with estimated base fee rates on page 199, CA did announce the final fee rates in all 60 material categories and the flat fee tiers for the 2025 program year that runs from July 1st through December 31st of 2025. As Savannah discussed earlier, the fee rates were calculated using submitted producer supply reports for Oregon based on producer supplied tons by material type to meet the 2025 Oregon program year budget that includes pre-program costs. To view the Oregon producer fee schedule for 2025, please log into the producer portal, and credentials are given to producers that have registered with CAA and signed the participant producer agreement. So with those credentials, you can log into the producer portal, navigate to the useful links section on the homepage, and select the article titled 2025 Oregon Producer Fee Schedule. It is important to note that the final fee schedule is not available on CAA's general website, so please log into the portal to view the fee schedule. Producer supply data plays a critical role in setting state-specific fees. The Oregon fees take into account 3 key factors similar to the national fee setting methodology. The first factor is system costs. As outlined in the Oregon Program Plan, CA has an estimated budget for each program year through 2028. If you have the Oregon Program Plan open, you can find the budgets for the first 3 years of the program on page 299. CA has conducted an evaluation of the Oregon recycling system, detailed in a project titled the Oregon Recycling System Optimization Project that informed the system costs. The second factor is the number of producers. Producers continue to register with CA in Oregon even after the program started in July. Late reports were included in 2025 fee setting through the end of April to include more producer reports and fee setting in an effort to minimize fee rates. 2026 fee rates are incorporating late reporters through the summer. More on 2026 fee rates in just a couple of slides. The third factor is supply data. The supply data is used to both set the category fee rates for all producers and calculate your company's individual fees based on your submitted report data. All producers pay the same fee rates, regardless if you've reported on time or submit a late report. For those that report late, however, they may be subject to late fees and interest on top of paying their respective individual material fees. Quick update on 2025 reporting and invoicing. For producers who have submitted an Oregon report, invoicing was completed in June. For producers who submitted late reports, moving forward, your invoice should be issued within a few weeks of submitting your report to CAA. Under the definitions, I would like to highlight the 2 change scenarios for Oregon reports. The first is a correction, and this is a change to a producer report required by CAA because of its ongoing report validation or because of an independent audit. Producers will receive a correction letter from CAA and will have 60 days to respond. The second change scenario is an adjustment. An adjustment is a change to an already submitted report initiated by a participant. After a producer hits submit on a report, they are unable to edit the report data and must follow the adjustment process. More on adjustments and specifically for 2025 adjustment requests. CA has a formalized Oregon adjustment request process for submitted reports where a producer finds a mistake or data entry error. The adjustment request Excel spreadsheet details everything that is needed to submit your report into the producer portal via the Help and Support tab. You can find the adjustment form in the producer portal in the adjustment request article viewable in the useful links section on the homepage. The adjustment submission instructions are outlined in the middle of this slide. If the adjustment is validated, it will impact any previously approved eco-modulation reports. Any validated adjustments will result in either an additional invoice or a future credit. Producers are only allowed one adjustment request for a single submitted report. The adjustment request must include all changes required to your report and an explanation for the change. While this slide is specific to Oregon, Colorado adjustments follow a very similar process, with the main difference being we have created a Colorado-specific adjustment Excel spreadsheet, but the submission of that is also in the Help and Support tab in the producer portal. Now let's look ahead at Oregon 2026 EPR fees. We are approaching the Oregon 2026 program year fees announcement in Q4 of 2025, which will be posted in the producer portal. Billing for the 2026 program year will be based on the 2024 supply data producers submitted during the Oregon reporting deadline earlier this year. The 2026 fees will be calculated in accordance with the 2026 Oregon budget and will incorporate adjustments and corrections. The 2026 fee rates will also include late reporters in an effort to maximize submitted supply tons to minimize fee rates. Now, with this being said, there will be a material report due in 2026. It will just not be used to set the 2026 program year fee rates. Now, to clarify here, the next reporting deadline for Oregon will be May 31st, 2026, and this data will be used to set the fee rates for the 2027 program year. It is important to emphasize for budgeting purposes that the fee rates in 2026 will be different than the fee rates for the 2025 program year that runs from July 1st through December 31st, 2025. You can find the program year budgets again on page 299 of the Oregon program plan that helps to illustrate the differences between the 2025 and 2026 program years. The 2026 Oregon producer fee rate schedule will be published in October or early November of 2025. The 2026 program fees will be split into two invoices, one issued in January of 2026 and the second issued in July of 2026. And you can see that illustrated in the table at the bottom of this slide. So in this example, for Oregon 2025, for that program period of July 1st through December 31st of 2025, the invoice example here is $100. That's the total EPR fees owed for the 2025 program year. And for the 2026 program year, it is still using that report data of 2024 that has already been submitted. But in this scenario, this producer owes $140 of total fees for the 2026 program period. So in this case, half of that, $70, would be invoiced in January of 2026, and the other $70 would be invoiced in July of 2026. Speaking of invoicing, we'll now go through a couple of slides on vendor setup. CEA's vendor information is now available in the producer portal. Importantly, producers only need to set up CAA as a vendor once, so you do not need to set this up for each state, as CAA's invoicing process is the same across states and program years. If you do have any questions for CAA about vendor setup, or if you have any specific forms that are required to be filled out by CAA, please contact our accounts receivable department at ar@circularaction.org. When you actually receive your invoice from CAA, invoices are sent from Circular Action Alliance at myworkday.com. And to avoid any delays in receiving invoices, producers should contact their IT security team and request that inbound traffic from this email address is whitelisted. By default, invoices are sent to the primary contact listed in your account. If you've previously completed the vendor setup confirmation survey or provided a unique billing contact to CAA, perhaps via producer.support@circularaction.org or to ar@circularaction.org, that billing contact will also receive an emailed copy of the invoice again from that same email address above. CDA does have a payment portal that is now live in an effort to make it easier for producers to pay their invoice, either via ACH or via credit card. To get started and to actually pay your invoice, you will need to have your invoice up, as the customer ID and the invoice number, which are both located on your invoice, will need to be put into the payment portal in order to make the payment. Great, moving on to budgeting for Colorado in 2026. A detailed fee schedule, or these are called dues in Colorado, was published in February of 2025 in the first draft of the Colorado Program Plan. In the updated version of the draft Colorado Program Plan published by CAA in June 2025, the estimated dues did not change. The estimated dues can be found in the June version of the Colorado Program Plan on page 190. Our Colorado Program Plan is found on the Colorado page of our website and also on the CDPHE website. The estimated dues in the Colorado Program Plan are listed by the aggregated material category as opposed to the specific material category like they are listed in Oregon's Program Plan. However, similar to Oregon's Program Plan that gives a fee range, in Colorado's Program Plan, there is an addition of a third fee range for material categories. So there is a low, a medium, and a high scenario. And on the far right of this slide, you can see that there's also a minimum and a maximum range of individual material category dues, which Oregon's did not include. This slide gives an overview of the path to the Colorado Program Plan approval, which is continuing to progress on schedule, at least as of early October. So as I mentioned in the last slide, the initial plan was submitted back in February. The board reviewed and provided comments, which then CA incorporated into our revised Colorado Program Plan that was submitted at the end of June, which then the board reviewed again for the second time. And the board did recommend approval for the plan. So now it is in the CDPHE review. The public comment period closed 120 days for approval or rejection. And we're also approaching our producer dues published. That's the dotted line here. The two main producer actions for 2025, the first being that reporting deadline, which was July 31st, 2025, and the second is when we'll be publishing producer dues in the producer portal, either in late October or early November. And we are still expected to have the plan receive its final approval before the end of the year. Here is just a quick slide overviewing a few of these statute requirements for eco-modulation. I will not go through this in its entirety, but you're more than welcome to pause the video to read the slide in its entirety. There are incentives that decrease dues and malices that increase dues. CA will release more guidance on eco-modulation for Colorado later in 2025 and ahead of the 2026 reporting deadline of May 31st. Where producers will report calendar year 2025 data to CAA. And looking ahead to Colorado 2026 EPR dues, Producer billing will be based off of that 2024 supply data producers submitted during the Colorado reporting deadline period. They had the deadline of July 31st, and producers will be billed for the calendar year of 2026, January through December. As I just mentioned, we're expecting the dues to be published in the portal here very shortly, either at the end of October or early November. And the billing schedule for Colorado will look the same as Oregon's for 2026, with half of the balance owed being invoiced in January of 2026, and the second half being invoiced in July 2026. If you'd like to see that table that illustrated that in Oregon, you're more than welcome to rewind the video and go back to the Oregon section of 2026 EPR fees if you'd like more detail. Now with that, I will turn it back over to Savannah, who is going to go through California early fees.
Great. Thanks, Matt. And like you said, I will now dive into some California early fees. Okay, so California's Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR law, requires that the Producer Responsibility Organization, or PRO, are set and to charge fees during the preparation of the plan to pay for things like the cost to reimbursement of the department, the needs assessment, the cost to implement the plan, and the operating costs. CAA approved an updated fee setting methodology for early fees. This approach is shaped directly by producer feedback and is driven by simplicity and will help fund startup costs in the states where CAA collects early fees. The fee rates will be charged based on the aggregate supply of each material class level, meaning that they are grouped by the type of material, with fee rate ranges developed using supply estimates. They will use the California Baseline Producer Reports of 2023 data to set the California early fees. The 2025 California Baseline Producer Report, using 2023 data year submitted by November 15th, 2025, will inform the draft fee rate ranges for early fees in 2026. The early fees are based on the amount of packaging a producer supplies into the state. Early fees are calculated from producer reported supply data, which will be aggregated into a set of 7 simplified aggregated material classes, which are glass and ceramics, metal, paper fiber, which is polycoat and laminate, just paper fiber, plastic rigid, plastic flexible, and then wood and other organic materials. The early fee rates will be set using a simplified aggregated material classes rather than the full list of the 95 covered material categories. At this stage, CA has greater confidence in using aggregated categories since they are more reliable until the full supply data is available and the California regulations are finalized. The early fee schedule will be set using a combination of modeling and initial producer supply data, and fees will be invoiced in August 2026 using updated producer supply data. As of late September 2025, CAA has published a California early fee range estimate for the aggregated material classes to help producers with budgeting. To find and view those early fee range estimates, registered producers can log into the producer portal and find the California Producer Early Fee Rate Schedule Estimate Ranges. To do so, they will navigate to the Useful Links section on the homepage of the portal and select the article titled Guidance and Tools. From there, producers can find the estimated ranges and download a watermarked copy of the early fee ranges that they can then use to share internally. As a reminder, the final early fees will be invoiced in August of 2026. Okay, and with all of that, we will wrap up by just reminding everyone to stay engaged. So if you have not done so already, please register with CAA by going to our registration form, which is our account registration form found on our website. Additional information and details can be found on our Producer Resource Center, We also have a monthly newsletter that producers can sign up for that keeps them up to date on emerging states and the latest resources we have available. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to registering or reporting, please email producer.support@circularaction.org. And as always, we have additional events that are always popping up on our events page, including our 101 producer onboarding, our 102 registration and agreements, and additional 103 budgeting for EPR fees. And with all of that, we want to say thank you and we hope you have a great day.